Sukuna and Makima are the overarching antagonists of their respective series in Jujutsu Kaisen and Chainsaw Man, with Sukuna pretty much battling the entire cast right now in the manga, and Makima being the antagonist up until the end of part 1 of Chainsaw Man. In today's video, I'll be discussing both of these characters and who I believe would win in this matchup. Before the video starts, please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and comment to help support both me and the channel, and let's try and get these numbers closer together. So if you enjoyed the video and would like to see more from me, then press the subscribe button. It's free and you can always change your mind whenever you feel like it. And another thing I like to add before the video starts is that I'll be going over all forms of Sukuna in this video, and with that being said, let's go over the scaling of the King of Curses. Now, when it comes to scaling Ryoma Sukuna, there are quite a few different ways to scale his AP. There's the low ball scaling that is derived from calcs, the mid ball scaling that is used by upscaling from Jogo and Dagon, and then there's the high ball scaling which is used from a feat from Yuki and a chapter extra statement. But let's start with the low ball first. So in order to determine just what this is, we can use Jogo's maximum meteor, which has been calced to be around small to large town level in AP. This is pretty consistent since we see things like Sukuna's domain expansion being able to destroy multiple city blocks, and he can increase the range up to 200 meters. And Sukuna's fire arrow is also shown in both the anime and manga to encompass a small portion of the city of Shibuya, which you can argue to be around multi-city block based off its AoE. But this would be more in line with its destructive capacity and not its AP, but you can decide where you believe this feat scales. Next is the mid-ball scaling, and you can use this to get Sukuna to around mountain to island level for his AP. Jogo with his domain is able to create a volcano, and Dagon is able to create an island with his. Because Sukuna massively outscales them and has a better and more refined domain than these two, then Sukuna would also upscale from this, and this would grant him this level of attack potency. And Jogo was stated to be a stronger combatant than Dagon, which by proxy would make Sukuna stronger than him as well. So this mid-ball scaling is backed up and is a pretty valid interpretation. Then there's the high ball scaling, and this is the planetary scaling for Sukuna. The first way to scale Sukuna to this is to use Yuki's black hole feat. During her battle with Kenjaku, she uses Star Rage to increase her mass beyond the norm to a point where she becomes an actual black hole. Something important to note though is that this black hole was being heavily suppressed and nerfed by both Yuki herself and Tengen. Kenjaku says that since the black hole was being suppressed, it wasn't actually at planetary levels of power, so using this as a planetary feat isn't valid. And even with this nerfed version, Kenjaku took serious damage and almost didn't survive it, so using him as an upscale for the feat also wouldn't work either. The black hole barely even destroyed the place that they were fighting in, but I'm sure you all get the point. The next way to scale Sukuna to planetary is through the chapter extra statement that says, and I quote, "Should any demon consume Sukuna's body parts, the power they gain could destroy the world as we know it," end quote. There are some problems with this statement. So the first issue is that it doesn't really match Sukuna's way of doing things. Sukuna has been shown and said repeatedly to want to continue to eat people and fight those that are both strong and intrigue him in battle. If the world is destroyed, then Sukuna won't be able to fulfill that goal, which would make this statement invalid. The second reason that this statement is wrong is because it doesn't consistently line up with the power scaling of the series. There aren't really any characters that are around planetary levels of power for Sukuna to upscale from due to him being the strongest sorcerer in history, and this would also mean that everyone battling against him right now would also need to be around that level of power or showcase planetary levels of feats, which at this current point in time just isn't the case. So due to the lack of consistency, this is not a valid interpretation for the scaling. But as I always say, if you do want to use this to scale Sukuna, by all means go for it. That's completely up to you. And now that I've gone over his AP, let's talk about his speed next. So for Sukuna's speed, the three main things to talk about is the Mach 3 meta, lightning speed meta, and the light speed meta. Starting with the Mach 3 meta first. So this meta stems from Gege saying that Cursed Naoya is Mach 3 at his maximum speed, and Maki, once fully awakened, was able to effortlessly outspeed this Naoya. Gege has admitted that saying that these two are around this level of speed was stupid and that he actually doesn't agree with this, but for simplicity's sake, and if you believe that this is true, then bear with me here. Maki also fights against 15 Finger Maguna with 10% cursed energy output, and Maguna was able to keep up with her and a bloodlusted Yuji with pretty much no effort. This version of Maguna did say that although his output was nerfed, his physical movements were actually fine, and since Sukuna is in Megumi's body, then his physicals would be weaker than Yuji's body, since obviously Yuji over Megumi in terms of physical ability. So if you go along with this line of scaling, then this is a fine placement for him to be at. Next is the lightning speed meta, and this is from Hikari dodging Kashimo's lightning at close range. Many people have contentions with this feat since it's believed Hikari was only able to move slightly and get the lightning to hit his shoulder, but this isn't necessarily the case. When we see Kashimo prepare his lightning, we see Hikari has his right foot up front and left foot behind him. And when the lightning hits him, he has his left foot up front with his right foot behind him, and was able to get the lightning to move from the middle of his head to his shoulder at close range. And because Sukuna upscales from both of them, then he would also scale above this as well. Then for the light speed meta, we have Sukuna being able to dodge light speed attacks, but it depends on how you interpret it. So Sukuna was able to dodge one of Curse Technique Kashimo's attacks while he was heavily fatigued, and it's stated that Kashimo's Curse Technique Mythical Beast Amber uses electromagnetic waves and other phenomena to transform his body and attack. And since Sukuna was able to dodge this at point blank range, with there also being a calc supporting this, then this would be a FTO speed feat. One of the main contentions I hear for this feat is that electromagnetic waves can only move at light speed in a vacuum or outer space. And while this is definitely true in our world, it's hard to say the same for JJK, especially since this is a fictional series that does so many things that don't apply to our real world. And because it isn't one-to-one, then a feat like this wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility to be a FTO feat, especially by the way it was portrayed and stated. So depending on your stance, you can use this to say if Sukuna is at this level of speed or not. And when Sukuna returns to his true form, which is physically stronger and faster than Megumi's, then he should upscale from this as well, which we see when Sukuna begins to blitz Kashimo when before he was just barely able to dodge. So again, this is another interpretation that you could use for Sukuna. Next, this is hacks and abilities, and so let's talk about these next. First, this is Dismantle and Cleave, and these are both slashing attacks that work somewhat differently. Dismantle is just regular slashes that can attack the opponent, while Cleave can auto adjust to the opponent's energy level and durability to immediately one-shot them. These slashes are also invisible and can't be seen with regular eyes. Then there's his Fire Arrow, which is literally a fire arrow that has massive destructive capabilities, being able to engulf multiple city blocks from its immediate detonation. Then Sukuna has his domain expansion, Malevolent Shrine, which combines his Dismantle and Cleave and gives him a maximum range of 200 meters around him to be able to immediately slash everything in his vicinity, which also includes inanimate objects. And this is also his Sure Hit technique, which would mean that the slashes would appear out of nowhere and instantly spawn on the target. Sukuna also has his World Cutting Dismantle, which cuts space itself and bypasses any form of conventional durability. And in order to use this, he has to make the sign for Malevolent Shrine with his hands, direct the slash with his hands, and also say the chant for it before it can be activated, which makes this ability, although overpowered, pretty balanced. Now when it comes to him and Megumi's body, he does have access to the 10 Shadows technique, and I'll quickly go over what it is and what he can do with it. Basically, there are 10 different shadow summons that Sukuna can use, and they all do different things and help Sukuna have good versatility in battle. He has Divine Dogs, Round Deer, which can heal him with Reverse Curse technique, Piercing Ox, which gains greater AP the longer it's charging, although it can only move in a straight line. He has access to Toads, Nue, Max Elephant, and can use Maharaga, which is the strongest Shikigami, and can adapt to any phenomenon. And that is everything there is to talk about for Sukuna. So now let's go over Makima, the Control Devil, and see how she stacks up in this matchup. So when talking about Makima, it can be difficult figuring out her feats since Chainsaw Man doesn't really have outright concrete scaling and mainly relies on using calcs to figure out where characters scale. But luckily there are many calcs for lots of characters, and they all seem to be pretty consistent with the portrayal of the series. In terms of AP, the most lowballed feats come from characters being able to destroy various buildings throughout the story, like the Typhoon Devil, which is able to casually destroy buildings, with the feat being calced at building level, which I'm sure you all guessed. Makima would upscale from this as she's obviously stronger than this devil and fights against the stronger Chainsaw Man than the one during this fight. Chainsaw Man can also be scaled to large building level using calcs from his battle with the Gun Fiend and it firing shots that have been calced to be around this level of power, and which again Makima would upscale from as she beat the Gun Devil off screen. And we know that in the verse, in most cases, when a devil turns into a fiend, they are normally weaker than if they're in their original form. So Chainsaw Man is stronger than the Gun Fiend, who Makima also upscales from. This is just generally a consistent tier of power for the verse as of part 1. And although there is some higher scaling for the verse in terms of lore, it just isn't too much to go off of since it's mainly in lore and Denji hasn't showcased this level of power. We learned that Chainsaw Man can eat devils, and when he does this, he can erase their con concepts, along with the memory of whatever is associated with it, like nuclear warfare, which if you were to grant this line of scaling, Chainsaw Man would be somewhere around island levels of power, which isn't generally consistent with the series, so I won't be using this for Makima. But now that we know what her AP is and where she scales, what about her speed? At her lowest interpretation, she scales above Chainsaw Man's Blitz of Katana Man, which has been calced at subsonic or faster than the eye level of speed, and can be higher to supersonic, transonic, hypersonic, or hypersonic plus when taking into account the differences in the time frame. Chainsaw Man is also faster than Rize or the Bomb Devil, where she has feats of her explosions ranging at the hypersonic levels of speed, Makima's Bang ability, which has also been calculated to be around high hypersonic, although this could be contentious, so I'll leave this up to you. And Chainsaw Man has another speed feat of intercepting and blocking an attack from Makima that was calculated to be around massively hypersonic, and Makima herself scales to this as she is able to keep up with Chainsaw Man during their battle, so this is typically accepted. Although it is important to note that Chainsaw Man during this instance was weakened as the fear of him was actually beginning to waver. And now that I've talked about Makima's speed, let's go over her hacks and abilities and see what she has to offer against the King of Curses. Because Makima is a devil, she has the basic abilities of one, such as superhuman physical strength and speed. She also has regeneration and heightened durability as well. Because she is the control devil, Makima has the ability to control anyone around her as long as she feels as that she is superior to them. When it comes to situations where this isn't the case, then Makima needs to beat them in combat in order to then be able to control them. And she also has a contract with the Prime Minister that states that if she is to take any damage or die, then it will be redirected to a random Japanese citizen, and if she dies, then she can instantly revive and come back to life. Because of this contract, and if you use the real world estimated population of Japan, then Makima would essentially have over 125 million lives that would need to be removed before she can actually be killed. And this is what really makes her a threat, along with being a pretty decent hand-to-hand combatant, being able to defeat a weakened Chainsaw Man during their encounter, and even rip out his heart after the fact. She does pose quite a threat in this matchup, but that's not all of what she can do. Because she is a devil, she can also make contracts with people, and because of this, she has access to quite a few abilities that make her even more problematic. She has access to the abilities of the Angel Devil, the Future Devil, the Snake Devil, the Punishment Devil, the Spider Devil, and the Zombie Devil. With the Angel Devil's powers, Makima is able to siphon off people's lifespans if they make contact with her, and can create weapons with the accumulated lifespan that are really powerful. With a 5-year usage, Makima can create a sword that is capable of one-shotting whoever it is used upon, pretty much like Higuruma's Executioner sword in JJK. There's also a 10-year and a 100-year usage, but since we didn't get to see what they do, I can't explain what the abilities are. And she has a 1,000-year usage that creates a spear that she can fire from a portal. It's also important to note that Angel's weapons are unique in the fact that they can interact with intangible or non-physical things like ghosts, which would mean that Makima is able to perceive and attack the soul, which could raise some more problems for Sukuna. Next is the Future Devil, and with this, she's able to see into the distant future, which is useful during combat and can greatly aid her. Next is the Punishment Devil, and we don't really see what this thing can do, but all we know is that it tortures the target until they die. Then there's the Spider Devil, and it doesn't have any notable abilities except being able to teleport Makima to wherever it is immediately. And then there's the Zombie Devil, and this thing can utilize zombies to give a numbers advantage to Makima, and can also turn whoever is bitten by it to a zombie as well. And that's all of Makima's abilities out of the way. So now that I've gone over both characters, who would win between the King of Curses, Ryoma Sukuna, and the Control Devil, Makima? Let's discuss this. So right away, we can already say that Makima should easily be able to defeat 1-finger, 2-finger, and 3-finger Sukuna just off her stats and feats alone. Sukuna doesn't have any notable showings that would suggest that he could take down Makima, especially over 125 million times. However, this does become a bit more interesting when you start to talk about 15-finger Sukuna and so on. So during the Shibuya incident, we see that Sukuna is able to use things like his dismantles and cleave slashes that were able to damage the likes of Maharaga, who scales above Jogo, who, depending on how you scale him, is considered around small to large town level, even the city block levels if you choose to go that route. Or if you want to go a step further and say that Jogo is mountain level and Maharaga scales above that, then you could also use that as well. Either way, Sukuna being around town level level to mountain level already makes his AP way higher than Makima's, but an issue that comes around is speed. Although this statement is inconsistent, if you're going by the story, then 15 Finger Sukuna would be slower than Mach 3, since Cursed Naoya and Maki were both around this level of speed, and have showings that would put them above Sukuna during Shibuya, as he hasn't shown to be relative to that level during this time, meaning 15 Finger Sukuna is somewhere below Mach 3 in speed. However, if you want, you could argue that Sukuna is arguably massively hypersonic plus if you use the anime scene of Toji supposedly dodging Nue's lightning. You could even say that 15 Finger Sukuna actually is massively hypersonic plus if you believe he's relative to or above Kashimo and Hikari in speed. 15 Finger Maguna was able to keep up with an awakened Maki who should be relative to Kashimo and Hikari, and Megumi's body is physically weaker than Yuji's, so just due to him being in a stronger body, he can be argued to be at this level. But if you want to argue story and just think that 15 Finger Sukuna isn't at this level, that's also fine. Because of this, 15 Finger Sukuna would outclass Makima in AP, but depending on speed, he'd either be relative to Makima, or he would be above her, or she would be above him. The only thing I could see possibly allowing him to win would be his domain expansion, which would instantly hit Makima with repeated dismantle slashes, since Makima doesn't have any curse energy, and therefore wouldn't be considered an inanimate object by Sukuna's domain. This may be able to drastically reduce the amount of lives Makima has, but I don't think it could potentially be enough to kill her. Even if Sukuna uses his fire arrow, which is really destructive, I don't see it taking all of her lives at once, and at most it could probably take a good amount. And because of the arguable relativity in their speed, then it's pretty fair to say that Makima could keep up with this version of Sukuna, and she also has the Future Devil's Foresight, which would allow her to see into the future to dodge Sukuna's attacks, and she also has an instant kill sword with her 5-year lifespan usage that Sukuna would also need to watch out for. And Makima can summon the Zombie Devil and be able to have a zombie bite Sukuna and turn him into a zombie. And she could even call upon the Punishment Devil to torture Sukuna until he dies. Next is 15 Finger Maguna, and this is actually where things start to go more in Sukuna's favor. Now, because he's in Megumi's body and not Yuji's, he'd be physically weaker than he would be in Yuji's body, but he makes up for this a lot, and that is Mahoraga and the 10 Shadows technique. And Makima would have a lot of difficulty putting Sukuna down, especially because he has access to Mahoraga. This Shikigami is able to adapt to any and all phenomena, and this is actually really broken. Mahoraga was able to adapt to Gojo's Limitless, and this made Gojo untouchable, and I can see Mahoraga doing something similar to Makima. Mahoraga has the ability to adapt to Makima's immortality, and this will allow Sukuna to be able to put her down for good. Sukuna himself can also bear Mahoraga's adaptation, meaning that instead of Mahoraga itself adapting to things, Sukuna himself can do it instead. And couple this with him being able to use the 10 Shadows technique along with his original techniques as well, I just don't see Makima finding any way of actually defeating Sukuna. Keep in mind, both Sukuna and Makima have massively hypersonic levels of speed, but Sukuna is slightly faster, being at massively hypersonic plus due to this version of Sukuna upscaling from Kashimo and Hikari. He can heal with RCT and has various different ways of putting down Makima if he's able to adapt to her immortality, like his domain expansion. So for 15 Finger Maguna versus Makima, I have Maguna winning a lot more easier than Makima, and if he's able to adapt to her immortality, then it's a done deal. Next is 20 Finger Maguna versus Makima, and this is pretty much the same as his 15 Finger version, except now he's at his full power and also has light speed scaling. So because of this, Sukuna would just be able to repeatedly blitz her and everything else I said prior, so Sukuna again wins. And finally there's True Form Sukuna, and although he is physically stronger again, he loses out on Mahoraga and the 10 Shadows, but he gains access to his World Cutting Dismantle, which allows Sukuna to target and cut space itself. He has an additional mouth and 2 arms, which lets him not only chant to increase his technique's output, but can also do signs for his techniques while fighting. This version of Sukuna is just absolutely overkill, even more so than his previous versions. He can bypass her durability with his World Cutting Slash, and although Makima can do the same with her angel weapons, it doesn't matter since she can't actually touch Sukuna because he's so much faster than her. And Sukuna also has really good endurance in this form, so I can actually see arguments of him lasting as long as he needs needs to in order to beat Makima. So to reiterate, I think Makima does beat 1 finger to 15 finger Sukuna pretty confidently, as she has speed that can be relative to or surpass him depending on how you interpret their feats, and her hacks and abilities give these versions of Sukuna an extremely tough fight. But I have Sukuna beating Makima when you talk about his 15 finger Maguna version, all the way up to his true form self, having both higher AP and speed than her, and having access to the 10 Shadows technique and Maharaga, while being able to negate her durability with his world cutting dismantle, and having really good endurance. Thank you all for watching the video, and please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and comment if you enjoyed the video and would like to see more on the channel. If you enjoyed this video, then I think you should check out my Gojo versus Makima video and see my thoughts on who I think would win between those two. Or you can check out my Kenjaku versus Makima video as well if you want to see how he does against her. Or if you'd like to see my recent video on the channel, then you can watch my Tear versus Freya video and see why that fight isn't close. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.